Hello and welcome to Fur, Fins, and Feathers. Believe it or not, but this is our 86th and 87th episodes, and we're going to have a double header this time because we have two guests who are going to share their expertise about pigeons. Welcome, gentlemen. You are?
I'm Frank McLaughlin. I live in Hanover, Massachusetts.
And you are?
I'm Guy Quartarone. I'm from Foxboro, Massachusetts.
And you both are experts on pigeons.
Yeah.
Frank, tell us about how did you start with pigeons? Well, first of all, many people have asked me, why are you talking about pigeons? There is a difference. What is the difference?
Well, what we keep racing pigeons. There's a lot of breeds, fancy type breeds of pigeons, maybe hundreds of breeds, but our thing, we have racing pigeons. And a racing pigeon is bred for competition, bred for homing. A racing pigeon is like a thoroughbred racehorse comparing to like a donkey, what you see on the street. And what's on the street is like a donkey, and racing pigeon is like a thoroughbred. They're beautiful, they're bigger, cleaner, stronger. So they're a different animal altogether. They're a different bird really altogether compared to what's wild in the neighborhood.
How did you start in racing pigeons?
For me, I had chickens as a kid, and I loved birds. Ever since I was a baby, I loved birds. And my father got me some chickens. We lived in Quincy in the city. And then one day we went to a farm, and they had these white fantail pigeons. The head was back, the big white fan. And he bought me a pair. I liked them. And they kept reproducing. So after about a year, I had maybe 12 or 14 of these fantails. So as a little kid, I decided to let some out. Well, I let them out, and they flew all around the neighborhood. They landed back in my yard. I opened the door to the chicken coop, and they marched back in, and I couldn't believe it. It was like the greatest thing as like a 9 or 10-year-old kid. My father got home from work. I said, "Dad, you can't believe what just happened." And he said, "Oh, I know a guy with homing pigeons. You might like those." And he took me to a person he knew in the city, and I saw his pigeons, the racing pigeons, the clock, the colors. And I was hooked. We gave away the chickens. The pigeons came in at 10 years old, and 50 years later, I'm still doing it.
Guy, how did you start?
So growing up, my dad, he lived in the city, and a guy in his paper route had pigeons, and he also was a bird lover.
Where was this?
Roslindale.
Okay.
And he was also a bird lover. I mean, he had chickens, ducks, geese, all in like a small lot in the city. And this guy got him pigeons on his route. And, you know, he had him growing up. And then once he got out of the Army and we moved to Foxboro, he got the pigeons again. And I got my first pigeons when I was 5 years old in 2006. And ever since then, I've been totally hooked.
You've been hooked.
Yeah.
Now you attend Bridgewater State University.
Yeah.
Where are you? You're majoring in what?
I'm majoring in criminal justice.
And you have this as an avocation.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of fun.
Now, how you have both of you are involved with businesses. You have businesses.
Yes. I'm actually, if you can believe it, a professional pigeon fancier. A fancier is someone that keeps pigeons. So
That's your full-time job.
yes. Yeah, since the late 90s, I've done nothing but pigeons. And I started off with going to Belgium and buying really top pigeons, then selling their babies. And then I decided to start importing pigeons from Europe to be like the biggest importer in the U.S. I worked for big races throughout the world, exporting pigeons. And the business has kept evolving, and now I have an auction site. It's like an eBay for racing pigeons. And yeah, so I've evolved throughout, but it's been pigeons since, I think, 1998, I went full-time professional pigeons.
We have a small group, as you know, that meets in Swansea, and they have coffee every morning, a little local group, and they've told me that you are well known in the pigeon world throughout the world as a writer. You do a lot of different things, all concerning pigeons.
Yep, I've been blessed in the sport. I've been able to travel. I speak on pigeons around the world, from South Africa to Taiwan I've been to Mexico, Europe, and so I've been very lucky. in the pigeon world, it's been good to me, and I try to give as much back as I can also.
And you've written a lot.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of articles over the years, and more educational stuff. I'm a very common sense pigeon fancier, and I try to, I do a lot with nature, and very basic but very common sense way to keep and house pigeons and race them, and I've helped a lot of people over the years.
That's fascinating. And yourself?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much starting out where Frank did 30 years ago. Now I'm going to Europe, and I'm starting to buy.
Have you
some of
gone
the
to
best
Europe
bits.
yet?
I think it's going to be my graduation gift to myself, because I'm going to take myself
That's a good one.
to Belgium, yeah.
That is, so Belgium seems to be the hotbed of pigeon fancy?
Yeah, Belgium is pretty much where it all started. That's where the competition started, and the pigeons, all great pigeons originated from Belgium. Now there's great pigeons in Asia and the US, all over the world, but everybody went to Belgium to get their stock starting, 100 years ago. And now, even till today, the most expensive pigeons, the most desirable pigeons are in Belgium. So that's like the place.
So is that a destination that you want to visit?
Yeah, I'm going to try to go over there for a couple weeks, and I'm going to do the same thing as what he did, and I'm going to try to buy the best I can afford, and I'm going to come back and I'll sell the children, and I'll race the children. And
We're not allowed to discuss prices on the air, but are pigeons very costly?
I mean, if someone was starting out, us as established fanciers, we like to help the new people, so no, we give them for free. But if they can be very expensive if you want to buy a champion bird or a child of a champion bird. The prices vary like anything else.
Can it be upwards to thousands of dollars?
Yeah, it can be thousands of dollars, yes. Which is, for me, I've watched the sport evolve from, in the last 50 years where $50 for a pigeon or $200, 30, 40 years ago, I was like, wow, imagine paying $50 or $200 for a pigeon. And now, thousands and thousands of dollars for big winners and breeders of winners.
Now, in the next episode, we're going to have one of your pigeons is going to come on the air. How does a race start? How do you get involved in racing?
so, I guess to race them, what we do, first off, we have to train them to come home. So when they're babies, we start letting them out around the house, and they start to learn their surroundings, and eventually they start to group up. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the common birds. They all circle together around the bridges and everything. So that's what our birds do. And they'll go off and explore, and then we start taking them half a mile away, and they come back, and we take them a mile, and they come back. And we increase the distance more and more and more. And then our combine, the Southern New England Combine, we all get together and we release them at one point in New York. And all the birds come back, and they average out the average speed throughout the course. And that's how you race them.
Yep, they all wear a chip, a computer chip, and they're scanned into
So
a
they're all
clock.
chipped.
Yep, they're all banded when they're babies, like a license plate, so they can be registered to us. Any of our birds can be traced back to us. And, these are the little rings or the bands that go on their legs. And mine is, I'm not sure if you can see it, AU 2022 McLaughlin Lofts. It's just an abbreviation for my pigeon thing. And then the band 919. We slip it on the leg when they're babies, and they wear it their whole lives. And guys, he's AU 2022 LSL as landing strip loft, and then the bird's band number. And again, just like a license plate. On the other leg, they wear a computer chip. So we go to the club, they scan them in the computer, they're loaded onto a truck. The truck will go from Norwood Club to Rhode Island Club to Fall River Club, New Bedford Club, Spindle City, there's a club up in North Shore, Boston. Drive them out to New York. Saturday morning, they liberate. They race home, and because we live in all different areas, it's not whose bird got home first. It's who's averaged the fastest speed in yards per minute. So when the birds enter the pigeon loft, they scan themselves in. They go over a scanner. and everything's downloaded into the computer, and they line up in yards per minute on the race sheet. So he's in Foxboro. My birds are in Hanover or Hanson, Mass. And we may live 30 miles apart, but it's all figured in yards per minute on the race report. Pretty exciting.
How long does it take for them to get home?
I mean, it all depends on the distance, really. I mean, from 100 miles, you could expect them to be home in 2 hours. They fly about 50 miles an hour. It's about the average. So
And they don't get lost, do they?
I mean, sometimes, but most of the times they end up working their way back. I mean, it may
Do they
take-
work together?
Well, they do fly as a group, and they will work together. The true champions, though, they tend to break out and go by themselves or fly a little faster and leave the flock. So the winning pigeons, on many occasions, will separate themselves from the group. The group will stay together for a period of time, and then they tend to start to break off because we live from New Hampshire down to southern Rhode Island, the Connecticut border. So the birds have to fan out and work their way home.
Fascinating. So it can couple of hours and they're home?
Yeah, I mean, usually for me, the rule of thumb is about 50 miles an hour for however long the race is. So whether it's 100 miles or it's 600 miles, I usually like to think it's about 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's usually what we plan. Now, depending on tailwinds, if they can go well up into the 70s if they have a strong tailwind. So they can 70 miles an hour is possible.
Do weather conditions affect them?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if it's a clear day with white, big, puffy clouds and cool, they fly tremendous. I mean, if it's overcast or, it's fog, it might slow them down. It kind of messes
What
with
about
their
rain
homing instinct. We tend to only have races on clear, good days, so they'll watch the weather forecast, and we won't enter the birds unless the weather's going to be right. But yeah, rain can slow them down. They still will come back, but they don't home as well in adverse weather conditions.
Winter is out,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
we race from the middle of April to the end of June, and then we start again the end of August through the end of October. So we race like the best spring and fall, more or less.
It's very interesting. When they're born, how many? This is the wrong question to ask. Maybe what do you call them? It's not a litter of pigeons.
Yeah.
A brood?
Well, they're squabs.
Squabs.
Baby pigeons are squabs. And yeah, we call it like a nest.
A nest.
Like this.
How many would be in a nest?
There's 2 per nest. So the
Okay.
pair will lay 2 eggs, and then when the babies reach maybe 3 weeks old, the hen will lay 2 more eggs. So there'll be 2 big babies and 2 eggs in the nest. And then they'll keep going through this cycle through the spring. We start breeding in the winter, and they'll breed right into the summer, more or less.
So how many would you expect to have?
Well, I try to breed about 80 for myself, and that's
A
gonna
year?
be that's going to be my team for the year. And that's what I work with from March to October.
And how long do the pigeons survive?
Oh, they live, some can live 20 years, but usually we race them till they're about maybe 5 years old.
And then what do you do with them?
Breeding. We usually will use them for breeding.
For breeding.
And they're good 10, 12 years old. Then after that, sometimes you have, some fertility problems, or, they're just not producing as well as they were when they were younger.
What about veterinary care?
We do seek veterinary care. There are some vets in the sport, but most of the, vets that we deal with, they're not really pigeon people, or they're more dog and cat. So a lot of the care, I think, just through experience, I've seen it all in 50 years, so I can pretty much figure out what's wrong. And some of the vets, even racing pigeon vets, call and occasionally ask me questions to solve some of their problems, because I've dealt with, you name it, in my lifetime.
You've probably covered every issue conceivable.
Pretty much so at this point. But yeah, we do seek veterinary care for testing, and but usually between us and the sport, we tend to be able to figure it out if there's an issue. They're hardy, they're very disease resistant, they're easy to keep. Pigeons are very healthy, bird in general.
Guy, what do they eat?
Well, they eat a mix of, it's a bunch of different seeds. We import our feed from Belgium. We give them the best feed possible on the market. And it's a mix of like corn, peas, safflower, wheat, barley, rape seeds, flax seeds. There's a bunch of small different seeds all compiled into one mix.
Okay. A lot of water?
Yeah, they drink a good amount of water. And we put different vitamins and electrolytes, probiotics, a lot of things to keep them healthy in there.
And they are healthy.
Yeah, no, a lot of people, when they see them on the street, they think they're rats, they think they're gross. But I mean, the pigeons that we keep they're the total opposite. I mean, they get baths a couple times a week. I mean, the coops get cleaned most days, and there's never really...
So there's a lot of upkeep.
Yeah, it's a 365-day-a-year job. You can't take a day off if you want to stay at the top.
Yeah. Like any hobby, you have to be dedicated to it. And what's good about it is it's in your backyard. I mean, some hobbies are away from the family. At least the racing pigeon hobby, you're at home. And
they are kept in coops.
Yep, they're kept. We call them pigeon lofts.
Lofts.
For a pigeon, pigeon coop would be for pigeon would be loft. But yeah, they're kept in coops in the backyard, and they're
relatively quiet, aren't they?
Yeah, very soothing. I mean, the most you can barely hear is a coo, but you could have your windows open and 50 or 100 birds, 20 feet from the house, and you really wouldn't hear them. They're very quiet, not like roosters or anything like that.
I was listening when I was getting ready to get out of the car to come in here this morning. There were a lot of roosters in the next yard.
That's funny. And
they were out there rather vocally.
Yeah, pigeons aren't vocal, not that much. I mean, they can communicate with each other. And
do they get along with each other?
I would say for the most part, the girls get along with each other better than the boys do. I mean, the boys, it's all like they want their perch in the loft, so they fight for it, and they like to keep their territory to themselves. But for the most part, they do get along. It's like one big friend group.
Do you breed them? But do you pick out like a prime one to breed to another one?
Yeah,
they're just not thrown together.
Yeah, so I mean, as pigeon fanciers, we like to think that we know what we're doing when it comes to pairing the birds together. Like, there's so many different bloodlines, and there's pigeons for like the shorter distance races, and there's pigeons for the longer distance races, and we try to mate them together to excel at a certain distance, or we want to make them breed good at all distances. So, I mean, we like to think that we're going to mate them right, but sometimes they know better than us. And sometimes just letting them mate to who they want to is better.
Yeah, we really we look at the pedigrees. They're all pedigreed, and you can trace them back generations, which is nice. And again, it's part of the interest of the sport, the genetics, and trying to keep improving the birds. And we do select the mates. They will mate for life. If you leave them together, the pair will stay together for their entire life. But if you separate them and they don't see each other for a couple weeks, then you can bring them back and you can switch, pairings around. But if you just let them be, they'll stay together forever, which is kind of interesting with the pigeons.
Now, you have traveled all over the world.
Yeah, I've been very lucky multiple times to South Africa, Zimbabwe. I've been to Belgium and Europe more times than I can count, all because of pigeons. And Taiwan a couple of times, China. I've been very lucky traveling with the birds.
So the fancy is pretty there's a lot of interest throughout the world.
Yeah, it's much more popular throughout the world than in the United States. Countries like Belgium is the Mecca, the Netherlands, it's huge, the United Kingdom, Central Europe is very big and growing. Asia, China they say there's 400,000 pigeon fanciers in China, maybe more, probably more. And that's right now what's driving the sport. A lot of the big buyers, a lot of the champion birds end up in China because there's very, very, very rich fanciers that want to own the best pigeons in the world. So a lot
That
of
is happening at dog shows.
Is it really?
In this country. There are Chinese millionaires who come over, and I've seen them at dog shows, and they come with an agent looking to see who's got the best Shih Tzu, or who's got the best Lhasa, or who's got the best pug. And I know somebody who just dropped somebody, she had a puppy for sale and was given $20,000 for a puppy.
Wow.
And I'm saying, whoa.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, for the pigeons, it's a lot easier to buy. I mean, you can buy them based off the records. Their race records will speak for themselves, or their breeding records will speak for themselves. So it's a lot easier for people from other countries or continents to, if they want to buy a bird, they can see its breeding records or its race records, and it makes it a lot easier.
So the sport is growing internationally.
Yeah, internationally, I think it's doing well. In the United States, it seems to be going, slowly decreasing, although we're gaining. Many of our new fanciers are coming from other countries. They've either moved from, Eastern Europe, or we have a lot of Cuban and Mexican fanciers that are, have come to the U.S., Chinese fanciers. Luckily, there's still young people like Guy that are starting out, and they'll be successful to keep it going. And he's bringing in, which is good to have some young people, that there are some younger members in our organization. And, it's not just all 50, 60, and 70-year-olds. There's a lot of 20-somethings that are starting out. So that's good for the sport here locally.
Yeah.
How many clubs are there in local clubs that people can take advantage of?
We have a club in Norwood, the Norwood Racing Pigeon Club. There's one in South Attleboro. It's called the Rhode Island Racing Pigeon Club. It's on the border of Attleboro and Pawtucket. There's the Fall River Pigeon Club. There's the New Bedford Pigeon Club. And there's the Southern Rhode Island Pigeon Club. So we've got 6 clubs we all race together. And then there's one in Spindle City. They race with us occasionally on some of the bigger races. So we have 7 clubs that are...
Now, your own club in Norwood, you have a site there. You
Yes.
have a clubhouse.
Yep, they have a clubhouse. They own the land. Like the members own the clubhouse. It's actually a really nice clubhouse, and it's one of the nicer ones. Probably the nicest would be the Rhode Island Racing Pigeon Club. They have a large building, a function hall, parking, and that's.
They're in Attleboro.
Yeah, right on the border of Pawtucket.
Pawtucket.
Yeah, very, very nice club. But yeah, most of the clubs, well, actually all the clubs, Fall River, they have their own clubhouse.
Yeah, everyone has their own clubhouse.
And they just get together and have meetings and...
Yeah, meetings. They will actually have occasional shows where, just for fun, we'll bring in a judge and people will, show their pigeons, and they're just judged on their conformation, their stance, just like dogs, and, feather quality. But most of the time we meet, to compete for racing, and they do fundraisers and different things for the communities too, to help charities and stuff like that. It's a nice group of guys. I mean, we're pretty lucky.
Any women join?
There's a few women in the sport, and I know there's a few younger girls in the Rhode Island Club they're pretty enthusiastic about the birds, but most of it's men around here anyway.
Yeah, which is sad. I mean, because women do a great job with the pigeons. They have a way with the animals. I think the birds are almost more relaxed around women. But yeah, we don't have a lot of women in the sport, but there are women racing pigeon fanciers in this country, and more so maybe in Belgium and other places.
Belgium seems to be a hotbed. It is in dogs, too.
Is it really? I didn't
Yes.
realize that.
Big dog shows in Belgium and
Wow.
Holland.
Huh. Yeah, and that would be, Belgium and Holland would be really the hotbed for pigeon racing. Then probably after that would be the United Kingdom in Europe. And that's the places that I tend to visit to go look for pigeons would be, Belgium.
Now, do you judge?
I have, yeah. I haven't done much with the shows in a long time, but I am a judge also.
You
for the
were
shows.
licensed to judge?
Well-
what breeds do you judge?
Well, with the pigeons, not really. With the pigeon, a judge is more or less someone with a lot of experience. There's no real licensing. They tried to implement that a while back, but by taking a test, but it never really got
Didn't
going.
fly.
No, so right now I would just judge racing pigeons. There are some massive shows where they have the different breeds, all the different fancy type birds, and
How many breeds are there?
I want to say there's about 300 from what I know off the top of my head, and I did that before I started racing. I had several different breeds, and I would show around the country with my dad and my brother. And it was really incredible. You'll see pigeons you wouldn't even know existed. And there was hundreds of them, thousands of them, all in this one big building. We're all competing for one prize. And it was pretty cool. Racing pigeons, they weren't as popular in the shows. They just didn't have the fancy look to them versus other birds where they just selectively breed them to look a certain way. And some of them are pretty unique.
And have different colors and
Yeah.
different feather combinations?
Yeah, different shapes and sizes. Some with tiny little beaks, and others with feathers that are up over their heads, and feathers that come off the feet, and some, were bred to roll. There's rolling pigeons and tumbling pigeons, and there's a lot of different varieties out there. It's really interesting if someone ever, Googled pigeon varieties. It's pretty amazing, the shapes and sizes.
Interesting. So when we come for our second segment, you are going to show us a pigeon and
Yeah.
what to look for.
Yeah. No, it'll be exciting.
Very good. And what are you going to do? You're going. And you'll give offer a commentary too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we are rolling up, so we are going to take a break, and we will be back with the next episode of Fur, Fins, and Feathers. This has been fascinating, and we're going to continue.
Thank you.
Sounds good.